Welcome to Out of Bounds. I'm Kieran Francis, and joining me is Aidan Cellini to talk about the Cats' 81-point grand final win. It's the club's 10th premiership. They become the oldest premiership team of all time because they actually had the oldest team of any game of all time going into it, which is just extraordinary. Amazing scenes at the end with the emotion. How did you see it, Aidan?
I mean, it was a fantastic game, I guess, for Geelong fans. Obviously, they started quite strong from the get-go, and they just did not take a backward step once. Sydney, unfortunately, probably didn't, meet the criteria for an AFL grand final, and the Cats kind of preyed on that and just turned out to be the much superior side in today's edition of the AFL grand final.
Obviously, the game was a huge rout, but it sort of didn't feel as if it was a terrible game just because Geelong was so ruthlessly efficient and the way they went about it, and it was just an extraordinary performance. And it was sad to see the Swans wilt on the big stage, but they are obviously a pretty young team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and don't if you're Sydney fans and you're listening right now, don't think it's all doom and gloom. You've definitely kind of exceeded a lot of expectations from pre-season predictions. Coming into this season, obviously a lot of young talent on that list, and definitely have a fair few years ahead of them. Obviously led by Chad Warner and James Rowbottom and the like. So definitely don't drop your heads. Obviously today's a very tough day for Sydney fans and supporters. But looking forward, there's definitely some bright futures there.
We'll get into discussing the game. If you guys have any questions, comments, get them in, and we'll go through them. We'll talk about Geelong's hot start because that's what obviously set up the win. It was 6-1 in the first quarter, 35-point lead at quarter time. Just wanted to go through some of the stats. It was an absolute mauling. It was 113 disposals to 67, 20 inside 50s to 8. Clearances were even, which obviously showed that it was Geelong's wall that was set up that was kind of denying Sydney, I guess, access to their forward line. 35 marks to 13, and marks inside 50 was 5-0. How did you see the first quarter, and as it obviously decided the game?
Well, it was a bit of a stalemate early on in the piece. Both sides struggling to kind of break through each other's defensive walls. Obviously, Geelong and Sydney have been the two premier defensive outfits in 2022, maybe alongside Fremantle and Melbourne as well. It was just kind of, as I said, it was a bit of a stalemate, a bit of a wrestle in that first 5 to 10 minutes. And obviously, once Geelong started breaking through and, getting kind of goal after goal, obviously, notably, Tom Hawkins, as he's done for 5-6 years in the ruck, ruck stoppage up forward, his ability to kind of just push his opponent out of the way legally, of course, and snap two very clever goals, which has kind of been a trademark for both Geelong and Hawkins over the last 6 or so years. So definitely, it was an interesting tactic by Sydney and John Longmire to not kind of guard that space, which was a bit disappointing, especially after the first goal actually went through. He did it again not long after that and really got Geelong off to that great start. And then, just a masterclass in the coaching aspect from Chris Scott, using Mark Blicavs as a midfielder and, with his aerobic capacity and strength as someone that's kind of rare with his stature and his height, the ability that he has to cover the ground and actually go with some of the game's best midfielders, but then also use him as a ruck across the ground in that first quarter to allow Reece Stanley to kind of drop behind the ball, which allows, a Tom Stewart or a Sam De Koning or even Jay Cole-Jasson to really come across and be as that spare, especially given the fact that Geelong actually had most of the territory in that first quarter.
I think you hit the nail on the head there because the game was pretty tight early. Geelong did have most of the possession, but the Swans were holding up, and it took those 2 goals from Hawkins that actually broke the game open and effectively, started the game going. And, it might have been a different story if the Swans had prevented that. There's some amazing performances in the first quarter. We talk about the first quarter because obviously it had such a strong impact on the result of the game. And, Selwood had 12 disposals, which was probably roughly half the disposals he had for the game. And, just to help get his team going. And you mentioned Mark Blicavs, 8 disposals and a goal. Just his ability to be all over the ground, be an option on the wing, get back into defence, kick the goal as well, drifting forward. He's just a nightmare option. Sam De Koning took 5 marks in the first quarter. Maybe I think 4 of them were intercept marks. What a player he's going to be. We'll talk more about him later, but just the ability to deny the Swans entries inside 50 and ground ball as well. Isaac Smith, a couple of goals as well. We all know we'll discuss Isaac Smith later. And it was a stunning performance. We just got a comment from Pamela Hitchcock saying there was some of the umpires' calls were really questionable. I wanted to bring up the James Rowbottom holding the ball, which actually happened in the first quarter, and it resulted in a Geelong goal going on the end when Rowbottom was tackled by Duncan, and he actually got boot to ball, and it was given holding the ball. Obviously, it's not a controversial moment based on the game in terms of because the result was 81 points. But I thought it was an interesting decision because I just didn't think that he got foot to the ball. It's not holding the ball. Is that how you saw it as well?
Well, again, in live, obviously, footage, and the umpire has a quick, split second just time to make that decision. It looked probably with you, Kieran, that he did get foot to ball. Now, if you look floated down and potentially did he kind of get a drop kick? Now, umpires have been instructed that if the player were to drop kick the ball, which means essentially they haven't disposed of the ball efficiently and effectively, they are to be, I guess, awarded a free kick against them. Maybe the umpire thought that was the case in this instance with Rowbottom and Mitch Duncan, or maybe it was the fact that he thought he had plenty of time to dispose of the ball, and obviously a lot of time was kind of given up when Duncan actually had it. But as it is for most games, especially in the grand final, the biggest stage of the year, the umpires' decisions are going to be potentially scrutinised depending on which side of the fence you're actually going to be on. But again, it's not going to be an easy decision to make most times, let alone this one in particular.
For what it's worth, I thought the umpires were pretty good throughout the day. I think that was the wrong call. But, I mean, we don't think that had a massive impact on the result of the game. Geelong deserved to win. I wanted to move on to the Cats' premiership quarter, the third quarter. Obviously, the second quarter was a bit of a stalemate. The Cats extended their margin by 1 point. Actually, there was a few moments in that second quarter. Franklin had that shot really early in the quarter where he hit the post. And then that would have got the Swans off to a flying start and maybe put them some momentum. But then Geelong went to the other end and kicked the goal, and it kind of stopped that momentum. But we'll talk about the premiership quarter, the third quarter. 6 goals to none. And it didn't start off very well for Sydney with poor Tom McCartan.
No. Sydney they just couldn't really bounce back from their first half blunders. I mean, they were kind of, as you mentioned before, they kind of got into a stalemate heading into halftime and kind of had a little bit of hope and a little bit of leaf to work with heading into the second half of this grand final. But, beginning of the quarter, just before I get to Tom McCartan's a couple of mistakes in the defence, they actually began the second half subbing out Sam Reid, who, maybe or may not might have been the wrong selection call by John Longmire and the coaching panel, bringing in, obviously, Braden Campbell's that medical sub. And then, obviously, that led straight to, Tom McCartan's 2 blunders in the defensive half. Obviously, one of them was going across goal, which, if you're taught as a footballer, you never go across goal unless you know it's 100% certain from, the age of 8 or 9 years old. And unfortunately for him, Brad Close was just sweating on that tournament, which obviously turned into another goal. And it was just a dominant performance by the superior team of the year and the superior team of the day. And I mean, 6 goals to 1 behind in the premiership quarter, obviously put the doubt into more of the Swans' minds and their supporters. Just putting the margin way too out of reach, and for any fairy tale comeback for the Sydney Swans.
And Isaac Smith, what a performance. Norm Smith medalist. You kind of knew probably, I would say, during the third quarter that he was going to win it. Possibly Stengel might have got there if he kicked a couple more or whatnot. Hawkins was magnificent as well. But Isaac Smith, quick run through, 32 disposals, 23 kicks, which resulted in 771 metres gained because he was moving the ball so well. Kicked the 3 goals, some crucial goals, breaking the game open in the first quarter. 12 marks, he worked hard on the spread. Even got 5 clearances, which is not his jam. 11 inside 50s and 14 scoring vomits. What a performance. I mean, when Isaac Smith went to Geelong, you always thought that he'd be a solid contributor and everything. But this is one of the all-time great grand final performances. He was just utterly dominant.
Yeah, well, this is Vincent Smith. His ability to kind of get on the outside and really break the game open with that speed and kind of dare. And obviously, we've talked about this type of player where, 60, 70 metre player where you run at your 10 or 15 metres and launch the ball, 50, 55, even 60 metres and really getting over that, I guess, first line of defence that the Swans have. And that was kind of Smith's trademark when he was at Hawthorn. And he's actually brought a fair bit of that to the Geelong lineup in the last couple of years. But it's just, his performance today, as along with a lot of his teammates, as you mentioned, Stengel and Hawkins and Dangerfield and even Selwood, they were up there as some of their best games they've probably played for the club. And obviously it mattered most on the biggest day of the year.
We have to talk about Sam Reid. Obviously, Sam Reid was selected. He was under an injury cloud. During the pre-game, I heard the commentators mention that he was actually looked like he was struggling in the warm-up, that he wasn't able to, wasn't going to be able to extend himself and everything. And when I heard that, I actually thought that there's probably a pretty good chance that Logan McDonald might actually come in as a late change and that Reid, wasn't going to be pass fit for the game. But Reid was pass fit for the game and he just had no impact. 4 disposals, none of them were kicks. And he basically looked lame.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough call. Obviously, hindsight's a beautiful thing. Now that we know that he was subbed out, he was obviously carrying that groin issue coming from the preliminary final win against Collingwood last week. And yeah, he just looked like he was getting pushed off the ball a bit too easily. I mean, Sam De Koning, his direct opponent throughout that first half, kind of made him look second rate. You know, Sam De Koning is only 19 years old, 20 years old, and he's quite a slim defender. So you wouldn't have thought he would put on as much muscle or strength as opposed to someone who's Sam Reid, which is 30 years old and have a lot of experience under his belt. And he just, as I said, he made Sam Reid look second rate, unfortunately, for the Swans. And as I said, hindsight is a beautiful thing. Maybe if we knew what we know now, or even, just before the game, if Sam Reid was going to go down and just look like he was unable to perform and actually impact the game, that maybe a different call would have been made, and maybe Logan McDonald would have got his chance despite actually being dropped for Hayden McLean before, at the selection table. But it's just, one of the many things that went wrong for the Swans today, and unfortunately, it just didn't seem to go right for them.
Do you think they deserve criticism for the decision? Tough question, but because if the viewpoint of Reid during the warm up is that he doesn't appear to be 100% fit, we saw it wasn't as if it was late in the game he started to struggle. It was straight away. He looked like he couldn't really move properly and had no jump. And you would think that these kind of things, surely that they're coming up in the fitness test. I mean, surely they're being seen. And like maybe Sam Reid's a good player and he's had a pretty good final series, but he's not Buddy Franklin. He's not Callum Mills. He's not he's not a superstar. He's not, your Dangerfield or a player that you absolutely have to have in the team. And I don't know. I just think that it was, I mean, you're right. Hindsight is one of the thing. And, maybe Sam Reid thought he was right. Maybe he copped a knock in the first, couple of minutes, and that's what kind of contributed to his downfall. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Also with Hayden McLean, it was a great story. I hadn't played since round 8, I think it was. Came to the game, but sadly he didn't have much impact either. He only had, I think, 4 disposals himself. I did kick a goal. It was a nice one-handed mark. But again, it's a sliding doors moment. Maybe Joel Amante would have been the better selection. But I mean, it's a tough call for the Swans. We've got a comment from Mary Livesay saying, why did the Swans leave Buddy behind in Sydney? And it wasn't Buddy's best game. Obviously, the delivery inside 50 wasn't brilliant. In the first quarter, I think I counted 3 or 4 ground balls where Buddy led and they actually bounced in front of him from some of the Swans' prime movers as well. So that obviously didn't help. But how did you see Buddy's performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's unlike Buddy to kind of have such a low impact game like he did. That first one against Melbourne, he had a lot of criticism against him. I think it was 9 touches against Stephen May, who just simply outplayed him despite Sydney actually getting the chocolates and going on to a home prelim final. You didn't think he probably would perform something similar of that performance again, especially within weeks of the previous one. But unfortunately, for him, he just couldn't seem to get himself going, and that's just a testament to more so to, I think, Geelong's defensive output and mindset, and not just their back 6 or 7, but actually throughout the whole ground. The ability to put pressure not only on the midfielders and the ball carriers throughout the Swans midfield and even their half-backs, kind of denying their ability to carry the ball forward with any kind of ferocity or dare, and allowing Buddy to kind of get that one-on-one where he could probably do his best work, as opposed to taking pack marks, which traditionally he hasn't really been strong at over his career. Which, don't get me wrong, he has been able to do it at times, but that's obviously not what he's known for. His ability to kind of get on the lead and double back and use his athleticism and speed to kind of beat defenders is usually his go-to. But, the long high ball kick down the line, you never see Buddy really taking these big contested grabs or, marking 2-on-1 or bringing the ball down. He tends to kind of lose those aerial contests. And unfortunately, today was another aspect of that as well.
Yeah, Buddy, 5 touches and a behind, so disappointing to him in that regard. We'll talk about some other missing Swans and also, I guess, the style of play that the Swans play throughout the game, which is a lot different from, the 1-9 in a row coming into the grand final and in terms of what we've seen in those games. Just wanted to go through some of the missing Swans. Justin McInerney's been a great wingman this year, had 7 disposals, which is extremely low for his standards. You look at the fact that he's probably matching up on the wing at someone like Isaac Smith and everything. Just look at the impact difference there. Paddy McCartan, great to see him kick a goal at the end of the game, but he only had 1 mark for the match. I guess it's a testament to Geelong's forward work rate. Isaac Heaney had 11 touches. I think he got his first touch midway through the second quarter. Kicked a goal, but for an All-Australian player, disappointing. And also Swans captain, Callum Mills, brilliant season. Probably win the best and fairest. We'll go very close. He had 13 disposals. He did kick a crucial goal, or not a crucial one, but he did kick an important goal to keep him in touch during the third quarter. But yeah, he didn't have much impact as well. Where did you see where the Swans kind of lacked in terms of the way they played and in terms of individual performances?
Yeah, I felt there was probably a few too many bystanders. It felt to me, especially from, I guess, that first 5 or 10 minutes, there was a lot of Sydney players almost subconsciously waiting for someone else to do it. Now, whether, a James Rogan was looking at a Callum Mills, or Callum Mills was looking at a Luke Parker, or Luke Parker was looking at, someone from the defensive backline to kind of take an intercept mark. As you mentioned, Paddy McCartney registered 1 mark for the game. And, that, usually his ability throughout this whole 2022 season is the ability to peel off and help his other defenders, his other teammates, and his brother Tom, and either intercepting the mark or knocking the ball out of bounds. And it was just a bit disappointing, obviously, from Sydney fans. It would have been kind of hard to watch these superstar players who essentially have been the second best team in the competition this year, and have been obviously up there with Geelong in the last 10 or so weeks. It's really kind of disappointing to see that these guys just couldn't perform on the big day. But as I said, I'll keep going back to it has to be a testament to Geelong's performance, both as a 22, all as individuals, and as a 22 or 23, as in Brandon Puffer did get on the field in the end. The ability to kind of win all the one-on-one contests, but also play as a team and as a unit, kind of just showcase why they were the best team in 2022, and obviously continue that win streak to 16. It proves to the competition that they've still got it despite their age. But on the Sydney front, it was very disappointing to see some of their stars not perform.
For me, the most disappointing part of Sydney's play was just their lack of dare in terms of, we saw in the Collingwood game, we saw last week in the first 3 quarters, and in a lot of their wins this season, biting off the kick through the middle. And then, that allowing Buddy Franklin to get the one-on-one, which you're talking about that he's best at in the situations, and Papley being one-on-one as well. But Geelong just didn't allow it. And it almost was a byproduct of the strong start that Geelong had, that Sydney then almost went into their shell, and they didn't want to bite that kick off because Geelong was so well organised in the corridor. And we just saw Sydney go around the boundary, and which is just completely unlike them. And Geelong just completely strangled them out of the game. So incredible performance by the Cats. We'll move on to Jeremy Cameron. No Cameron, no worries. Cameron did a couple late goals, but Jeremy Cameron wasn't the star who actually broke the game open in the forward line.
Yeah, obviously, we're coming across as a dominant full forward from the Giants. Coleman medalist in that 2019 year. High draft pick. And Geelong actually, it seemed like at the time they gave the kitchen sink to the Giants just to secure him. And it just, although he didn't probably have his best game today, I mean, he got him to this point in the season, or was part of the reason why he got there. As you said, he had 2 goals and it was 18 disposals that he got for the game, which stats alone actually doesn't look too bad. But it's probably heightened by the fact that Geelong, especially in the second half, were kind of in party mode, so to speak. They were sharing the love around as well, kind of passing to one another. And I think Dangerfield actually handballed to Cameron to kick one of his goals. I think late in the game there. So kind of it was emphasised his stats, and doesn't necessarily mean he had the most impact. Which is, for Geelong and Geelong fans and Geelong going forward, that's a good thing. The ability that, I guess, I believe probably one of the best players in the competition at the moment, the ability to have the greatest impact for maybe not as many touches. He's obviously very heavily involved in scores. Obviously, if he's not kicking in himself, he's usually setting them up. He's added to his game the ability to roam up the ground and then burn his opponent on the way back and get out the back, and kind of work in perfect tandem with Tom Hawkins and other forwards like Tyson Stengel and even Gary Rowan, who was also relatively quiet by some standards as well, that he probably sets on himself. So the fact that Geelong can get it done, and can get it done so convincingly against the Swans on the biggest stage without essentially Cameron kind of putting his best foot forward when the game was to be won early on, it's only good signs for Geelong, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I think that Cameron might have actually played a bit of a selfless role, because we saw Tom McCartan playing mainly on Hawkins. So you would think that Paddy McCartan was probably spending most of the time on Cameron. And as we just mentioned earlier, Paddy McCartan had no impact as an intercept player. He had 1 mark for the game, and he wasn't able to impact contests and stuff. So, I mean, maybe Cameron, did play a kind of selfless role in terms of to try to disrupt that defensive system. We actually saw him do that earlier in the season with Lear. and drag Lear up the ground in a similar way. We know Cameron does like to go up the ground, and yeah, I mean, he starts to look pretty good, but it just shows how dangerous the Geelong forward line is when Cameron doesn't have a particularly good. I mean, he has kicked a couple of goals, but he doesn't have a particularly strong game when it comes to impact wise. But we've seen the likes of Tom Hawkins and Tyson Stengel step up, and yeah, what did you make of those two players in particular? Their impact on the game.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Tom Hawkins obviously opened the Cats account with 2 goals from ruck stoppages. Obviously, it's an invaluable asset that Chris Scott and the Cats actually have the ability for him to kind of dominate in that area. And if he's not actually taking the ball and probably having a shot on goal, which he did obviously earlier in the game, he's usually handballing off to a Jeremy Cameron or Isaac Smith, kind of just running through the pack with speed. And obviously, it's going to be difficult to defend. I thought, Tom Hawkins probably had the Norm Smith rely heavily on his boot. I think he kicked 3 goals, 4 for the match. If you turn that into even 5 goals or 6 goals, you'd almost have to sew that up as a Norm Smith medal performance. So yeah, he was definitely one of the best Cats today, in my opinion. Anyway, he obviously stood up when it mattered most, and obviously you saw the emotion after the game with him and Selden and the other players. It just showed what it means to him. Obviously, he was part of that kind of 2011 grand finals, and it's been a long road with him, Chris Scott, and the Cats up until this point. And obviously they're victors again, only but in 2022. And Tyson Stengel has to be one of the stories of the year in the AFL. Obviously, was part of Richmond and Adelaide before kind of getting dropped from those clubs and being delisted. And Geelong kind of saw something that obviously not a lot of clubs did, or initially did, but probably didn't want to take that chance on him. I've heard reports that Eddie Betts had a lot to do with Stengel's kind of rise to stardom. Obviously, he had the ability to be a coming small forward like Eddie Betts was, probably arguably the best to ever really do it, or one of. And yeah, Stengel, obviously All-Australian, 46 goals for the year. Was pretty quiet, I think, against the Collingwood game. Obviously had to kick a few goals last week and then 4 goals today. Obviously one of another worthy performers of Geelong today, and could have even put his hand up for Norm Smith, and probably was in actually the running if you look at the votes as well. But yeah, it's a great story to see someone kind of go through so much turmoil and struggle to almost flip the script and do obviously what no one else has really done, and being delisted or sacked from 2 other clubs and move on to a third and become an All-Australian in his first year, and now a premiership player, and could have easily become a Norm Smith medal as well.
I want to talk about Tom Hawkins. Back in 2011, Hawkins was 22, 23. He was still making his way as a key forward. He actually only kicked 27 goals that year, which pretty sure is the only year since that he has kicked less than 46 goals since then. And he actually had a really, really strong impact in that grand final when Pozzo got injured. And that's 11 years ago. Fast forward now, he's 34. He's ended up with 67 goals this season. Obviously, he's played more games than Charlie Curnow, but he's kicked the most goals of any player this season. It's his second consecutive 60-goal season. And it's actually his second best ever haul. He kicked 68 goals back in, I think, 2015. So, I mean, what a player. He's also second in the league for goal assists. That's extraordinary. To kick that many goals and then to also be that high in goal assists at his age, at 34. I mean, he's going to go around again. He's probably got a couple more years left the way he's going.
The way Tom Hawkins is playing, I wouldn't say him, wouldn't be surprised me if he had another 1, 2, maybe 3 years. Obviously, I'm thinking quite positively with the glass half full that he could kind of continue to go on his merry way. Obviously, he was an All-Australian this year, a captain as well. And what I've really loved about his transformation over his journey, obviously since starting, I think it was 2007, and missed out on that premiership, but was part of the 2008 loss to Hawthorn, is his ability to, one, it kind of, as a key forward entering the league, is a tendency to kind of look at yourself and go, if I don't kick 2, 3, 4 goals a game, I'm not doing my job. As the better teams do, and as the best forwards do in the competition, as they continue to transform and evolve into certainly the players they will become, like Hawkins has, it goes into from a personal, individual kind of perspective and base to a team-based performance. And as you mentioned, he's leading I think he was second in the goal assists this season. He now has the most overall goals in 2022, obviously excluding the finals. He actually wouldn't have won the Coleman, and Charlie Curnow did. So his ability to not only actually have a big impact with himself and hit the scoreboard, he's now getting involved and allowing and helping and assisting players like a Jeremy Cameron, a Tyson Stengel, obviously kicked 46 goals this year as well. Brad Close has popped up with many goals. Obviously, Gary Rowan comes and goes as well. Graham Myers as well has had a great final series. So his ability to evolve and change almost as the game is evolving and changing. He hasn't allowed the game to go past him at all. And in fact, he's probably 1 or 2 steps ahead which it seems like the Cats have been for 10 or so years. So it honestly, it's great to watch. You hate kind of seeing some of the best players kind of retire or conk out at age 30, 31, 32, maybe due to injury or the ability that they can't actually perform on the big stage. But as we've mentioned, Hawkins 3 goals for in a grand final winning side. All-Australian captain as well at the age of 34 and continues to perform week in, week out for Chris Scott and Geelong. So for his sake and for Geelong's and just, I guess for the game, I hope he does go on for 2-3 more years. But yeah, he's an absolute superstar.
How good can Tyson Stengel be? He's 23. He's kicked 4 goals around a foul. He's kicked 46 goals. How deadly was he today? Just he had 4 shots, 4 goals. There was set shots from 50. There was set shot snaps from the boundary. He was first to the football when the ball hit the ground. He chased and tackled. He's actually just got better as the season progressed. He started off, when I say slow, he's still kicking goals, but he's just hit like absolute, huge form heading into finals and finals now. 23 years old. How good can he be going forward? He's got 7-8 years of football left ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now we're kind of seeing the footy world, and probably Geelong knew it pre-season, which is why they signed him up when everyone thought that was a bit of a strange move. His ability to kind of be at the drop of the ball every single time. And I'm not saying he's at that level of an Eddie Betts or even a Stephen Milne or players a lot like that who just constantly get to the right spots at the right time, get in the pack with pace. And if not taking the ball cleanly or trying to set up another player, it kind of causes a bit of worry and confusion of the opposition sides. They've got defenders just streaming back and kind of forgetting where the ball is just to make sure Stengel is kind of guarded for. Now, obviously, yeah, he's a 23-year-old. He actually hasn't played many games. This is his first real crack at AFL football. And if he keeps getting better, which hopefully he does, he'll gain more experience. He'll understand even more so where to go, when to go, and who to go near. And as Geelong evolve, he will continue to evolve. And he's at probably the best club to really hone in on his skills, and that is his deadliness in front of goal, his ability to find himself at the right spot, at the drop of the ball each and every single time. And he's also developed into quite a pressure small forward now, which, as you know, in the game of AFL, you can't have one string to your bow. It's good that he can kick goals, which he did all season, but now he's adding more and more bows and more assets to his game, which is only going to be more valuable as he goes on with Geelong going forward.
Speaking of some other amazing performances in the grand final, Patrick Dangerfield, not only his grand final, but also his preliminary final, just amazing. Like, he was a clearance beast, bursting out of the centre. He had, I don't have the stats with me right now, but I think he had about 26, 27 disposals, 9 clearances. Goal in the last score, I think, possibly. Actually, no, he handled off to Cameron, but it was just an extraordinary performance, and he didn't really have his best home and away season, but boy, he came good during finals. Absolutely.
I mean, as we know, Patrick Dangerfield is a superstar of the competition. Obviously, a 2016 Brownlow medalist coming across from Adelaide at the end of 2015. Everyone was kind of a little bit dirty on him for that decision. Obviously, Geelong were one of the better teams. Obviously, I think they missed that final series in 2015, but had been around the mark for 10 years prior. And obviously, since then, they haven't missed a final series actually since that point. He burst onto the scene when he joined Geelong at Cardinia Park from 2016. And yeah, this season in 2022, obviously he battled with injury. I think his calf was giving him a bit of an issue throughout the year. And Geelong actually made, looking back on it now, as we said, hindsight's a beautiful thing. The mature decision to kind of say, you know what, Paddy, take a break. We need you when it's going to matter most. Hopefully in September and as deep as we can go. And he had, I think, 2 or 3 weeks off, maybe even 4, to really get himself right. And I think Chris Scott labelled it, a mini pre-season kind of. I think it was halfway through the year or just after, and he really set his sights on becoming a premiership player, which is something that's eluded him. He's almost done every single accolade, individual or not team, given the fact he hasn't won a premiership up until today. But Brownlow medals, All-Australian jackets. I think he got the Lee Matthews MVP award in that 2016 season. Best and fairest for both Adelaide and Geelong. He's done everything, and now he actually can tick off a premiership player. And he was a main reason why they really got going in that first half and really set up the game alongside Selwood and a few others. But Dangerfield is a very well-deserved premiership player, and he should hang his hat pretty high on the mountain with that performance today and the final series, of course.
Just to confirm his stats, it was 26 disposals, 9 clearances, but he had 12 score involvements, which was only below Isaac Smith. So that's just to show his impact on the game. He was able to, all of his clearances, winning the ball out of the setter, was giving the forwards first use, and it was just a superb performance. And I think Geelong managed him and also Joel Selwood, who we'll talk about in a second, really well this year. They used him off the bench early on in the final series, conserved their legs and everything. During the season, Dangerfield missed quite a few games. They definitely erred on the conservative side with game time and everything, and they got the full reward. Talk about Joel Selwood. Is he going to retire? Because there's plenty of emotion there. I hope he hasn't announced it while we're all going to air, because that's a possibility. But there was plenty of emotion when he got on the last quarter, and then obviously when he was accepting the Premiership Cup. What did you make of it?
And this is probably I probably believe he probably would suggest that, people aside from Geelong fans don't really love Joel Selwood. I'm a huge fan. Now, he's been criticised and kind of condemned for the ducking rule and lifting his shoulder in contest throughout his whole career. But what I love about him he's a raw AFL footballer. He just gives his heart 24/7 throughout his whole career. He's the longest reigning captain in AFL VFL history, taking over Stephen Kieran, I think earlier this year. I think in round 3 against Collingwood, I believe it was. Now he's a premiership captain. He's led Geelong from day dot. When he was an 18-year-old, they were saying that he rubbed up people the wrong way because of his kind of leadership abilities, although he was at such a young age. Obviously, took over captaincy from Cameron Ling after that 2011 premiership success. And I really hope he doesn't retire. Obviously, I'm not too sure if he's announced anything yet as we've been here. But, the emotion we saw after the game between two great mates in Tom Hawkins and Joel Selwood, with tears running down their faces. I hope it was just the fact that they've worked so hard for 11 years. They've gotten so close. Obviously, you can remember the 2020 grand final where they actually looked like probably breaking the mould and defeating Richmond. I think it was like about halfway through that second quarter. They're up by 3 or 4 goals. I think it was third quarter, actually. They've gotten so agonisingly close on countless occasions with prelim finals, semi-finals. I've only missed one final series, I think, since 2016, which was the 2015 year. So you can see the hard work that all AFL players go into. But in terms of Joel Selwood, I guess you kind of almost saw this relief on his face that, yes, he's done it. He's like Dangerfield and like a lot of great other midfielders. He's ticked a lot of boxes with all Australians, and Beston, Fairists, and the like. He has unfortunately missed out, hasn't gotten a Brownlow yet, and you probably have to say he won't, given the fact of his age and him nearing retirement. But now he's a premiership captain. He'd won 3, in the years prior to becoming captain of the Geelong Football Club, but now, to lead a club to premiership glory has to be one of the best achievements in his life on the footballing field. So for Geelong's sake and Geelong fans' sake, and even footy lovers, I hope he doesn't retire. But it was definitely, it was worthwhile seeing the emotion, the raw emotion that he shared after the game.
Yeah, well, there was a brilliant speech by Dane Rampy as well, as a losing skipper, and how and you could see the admiration. He specifically mentioned Joel Selwood, the admiration that the Swans leader had for Joel Selwood, and that was one of the more. It's obviously very difficult to do a speech when you lose a grand final, but I thought the Dane Rampy speech was magnificent. And you also saw emotion of people in the stands around Selwood's retirement as well. I even saw Jared Geary almost shed a tear in the stand as well, which is a bit random. St Kilda's old captain, and what a career by Joel Selwood. It would be a great, as we said, we don't want him to retire, but it would be an amazing moment to bow out, wouldn't it? With your 4th premiership captain of the team. So watch this space with Joel Selwood. Another cat that I wanted to talk about in terms of his first half performance was Sam De Koning. He's come onto the scene this season as a tall defender. To be honest, most of us thought at the start of the season that he might be, blooded and play a few games this year. We had no idea he was going to be as good as this.
Yeah, Sam De Koning obviously came second in the rising star behind Nick Dacos, who was probably in the eyes of most was the unanimous winner, but Sam De Koning obviously wasn't too far behind. He's kind of the modern day prototype for a defender. He doesn't look like he's the strongest player. Obviously, he'll continue to work on that if Geelong see fit. His ability to kind of peel off to mark. I think he stands well over 200 centimetres. Could probably eventually could go up forward and be kind of this rangy forward who has the ability to mark the ball. But at the moment, he's playing a very good defensive game and has this whole entire season, which has been kind of a bit of an asset for Geelong, which he has the ability to kind of lock down on some of the better forwards in the game. Obviously, Geelong's defensive structures are team-based. It's not necessarily De Koning goes to one or Tom Stewart or Cole Jasny. So really work together in tandem to make sure that they can prevent opposition from scoring easily, but also rebounding as well. And, De Koning was dominant. I think he had 5 marks, in that first quarter alone. His ability to kind of peel off, intercept the ball from opposition kicks, going down the line, going inside 450, just makes him a tremendous asset. Obviously, I think he's 19 or 20 years old, so you'd hope and you'd have to think he's probably got at least 10, 12, potentially 15 years the way, AFL players are preparing themselves and getting themselves right to extend their careers. So that's exciting for Geelong fans, obviously, going forward. But yeah, no one probably thought he was going to be as good as what he is, but I have to say for Geelong fans, it's definitely something to be excited and to watch for going forward.
It's pretty scary, the thought of him getting stronger, because you're right. Like it's his first season. He's still got probably a bit of filling out to do in terms of muscle wise and stuff. But he's hot. He's huge. He's height wise. He's got a big frame and just so cool, calm, and collected for a player who's played 25 games, 26 games, or whatever it is. And he's just able to shut down. He's able to take marks. His disposal is extremely good for a defender. We all know over the years that some big defenders haven't had the best disposals and everything. And what a player! He's going to be there at the back of Geelong for the next 10 years. And people have said that Geelong haven't really been bringing through much youth and stuff and everything. Well, they've suddenly got De Koning, who's probably going to be a future All-Australian. They've got Tyson Stengel at 23, who is an All-Australian, and Max Holmes, who was probably the best man in the league before this. So this is funny how they're the oldest team and everything, but there's still some young talent coming through. I just wanted a special mention to Jed Hughes. I don't think he touched the ball very much, but I thought he did a pretty good job limiting the impact of Tom Papley. Papley didn't have much impact until later on the game, and I don't think Hughes touched the ball much, but Papley's been a match winner for the Swans during this season and everything, and he was one player who could probably break the game open. And players like Jed Hughes and Jake College-Dasney probably don't get the credit they deserve. College-Dasney probably spent a fair bit of time on Hayward, and I think apart from Hayward kicking the first goal, I don't think Hayward had much impact either. It's a special mention to them. Let's talk about the positive for the Swans. Obviously, there wasn't many in them, but Chad Warner had a pretty good game. I thought that he was pretty good when the game was over, and then he was maybe a bit missing early when the crunch was on, and also Robbie Fox.
Yeah, unfortunately for Swans, there's not many positives you can actually take out of today's game. Obviously, losing a grand final, whether it be 81 points like unfortunately they did today, or the closest margins of one, you can't always kind of see the game and the day in a negative light. And Robbie Fox, I thought really battled quite well and probably was very good. Had the battle won against Jeremy Cameron and was very good early on in the piece. Obviously, Geelong found other avenues to go with Hawkins kicking 3 in the end. Stengel 4 close as well, popping up. I think Myers also kicked one. Selwood also got on the board as well. So the ability that Geelong have to obviously spread the goal load, it was impressive. Robbie Fox was one I thought, especially today, alongside Chad Warner, of course. But Robbie Fox really battled well. He kept Jeremy Cameron, I think, wasn't goalless up until a certain point. Obviously, Jeremy Cameron got a few junk time goals toward the end, but it was a bit of party time for the Cats. Robbie Fox still had that dare and that ability to kind of take the game on. There was multiple times throughout the first half of the game where, he broke the game open. He either took advantage and he handballed forward and he really tried to get that overlap running, which sometimes actually led to Sydney either gaining territory and getting the ball inside their forward 50 or even sometimes actually turning into a shot on goal. And that's why I love this game. Obviously he's probably a bit undersized with Jeremy Cameron. If you stand next to Jeremy Cameron, you think, oh boy, today's going to be a tough day. Arguably one of the best players in the competition. But he battled valiantly. He was very good, I thought. Obviously, Geelong just got on top of Sydney holistically, on every aspect of the ground and all over the ground. So it's really hard to kind of pinpoint some positives for the Swans, but Robbie Fox was definitely one, as was Chad Warner, who really got going. I think he finished the game with 10 clearances. He's only, I think, 20 years old, or maybe 21 this year, and he just seems like an absolute superstar. Kind of like Kieran, kind of jumped out of the box this season in 2022 and was one of the main reasons why they were able to jump up into premiership contention and make a grand final. Unfortunately, his performance today was to no avail. You have to be, 22, 23 players have to all do their bit and play their part for a team to actually win a grand final. And unfortunately, the Swans left it up to too few. And unfortunately, that's just how way it goes.
Yeah, I thought Robbie Fox was absolutely excellent. I think if you look at the best players in the papers, I think most people probably have Warner first, but because there's probably a bit of stat padding there from Warner. But I thought Robbie Fox is excellent. I think that the result would have been a lot worse if it wasn't for him. And you're right, he's there and he's coming out of the back line. He started quite a few defensive changes coming out. He had 26 disposals, which don't quote me on this, but I would probably think might be close to a career high for him. He's never been a big disposal winner, and he was excellent. And he was easily the Swans' best defender. Chad Warner actually started on the bench, which I thought was quite interesting. I mean, it didn't have a huge impact on the score because, as we know, the game was pretty tight until Hawkins kicked those 2 goals made for the quarter. But you wonder if that might have contributed to the Swans maybe not getting some pressure and getting some field meters in the first quarter, because Warner is by far their best ball mover. He's, as we talk about, that 70-meter player, and he's a player that can break the lines. And you felt as if the Swans didn't have any foothold in the game early. And Warner was great. When the game was over, not potting him, but like he was excellent and like his teammates. I think Robbie Fox was the only player to stand up when the crunch was really on, and then Warner kind of performed well. But going forwards, Chad Warner has been an exciting player. His ability to break away from stoppages. I had the pleasure of watching him live at Marvel Stadium the season and everything. He's almost untaggable because his ability to burst with his speed. And the Swans obviously use him well with hands and everything. So that's pretty exciting for the Swans. In terms of the Swans' defence, the McCartan brothers, Rampy, have been excellent this year, but it just completely fell down on the big stage, which is a bit sad. And I guess you almost felt as if the Swans are a young team when it comes to finals experience, and when it comes to just compared to Geelong really. And I guess it kind of just felt like it was men against boys today. And the Swans will learn a lot from that. And I mean, you can't really see the Swans going anywhere. In terms of the future, they need to have transition. In terms of Logan McDonald coming into the team, McDonald's probably going to be a pretty good player. He didn't have the best back end of the season, so he got dropped from the grand final team. Sad story, but it's what it is. And if he can come through and everything, you got Braden Campbell also to come through. There's a lot of things to look forward to. Geelong, premiers, can they go back to back? I mean, they probably can, but they're getting older. I mean, we said at the start of the season that every year Geelong are too old, they can't win flags. Well, everyone looks pretty stupid saying that now. What do you see for the future of Geelong?
Yeah, I mean, pre-season predictions, everyone had Geelong kind of slowly going on the way down. They lost the prelim final last year to Melbourne, obviously eventual premiers at Optus Stadium. And again, they just seem to defy the odds. I think, as you said before earlier, that they were the oldest team to field ever, I think, in AFL history, or according to some of the records that we've looked up. So, they just keep defying the odds. And what the beauty of it is, and I think the reason why they potentially could go again, is the fact that some of their stars are performing at they're still performing at their peak. You don't need Dangerfield getting 30 touches every week like he probably did 4 or 5 years ago, or felt the need he had to. It's a real team-orientated performance, and they've got these youngsters coming in, as you said, Max Holmes, Tyson Stengel, Brad Close, Sam De Koning, and that just complements this breadth of experience that they've got all across the ground. They continue to put themselves in that position, and I remember Joel Selwood said shortly after the game that he doesn't apologise for, yes, they might have missed out on grand final wins or prelim wins, and they've kind of fell short over the last decade. Obviously, last time was 2011 when they did win. And he didn't apologise for that, and I love it. They give themselves a chance every single year to achieve the ultimate goal, which is a premiership. Obviously, only there can be one team to do it out of the 18. Geelong's year was this year, and I feel like they can go back again there next year because they give themselves a chance despite what people think, despite the doubters that believe that they're too old. Yes, their list will now essentially, or should technically be older, regardless if they bring in some new young talent in the off season or trade in or something like that. Obviously their older players are going to get at least a year older heading into 2023, and barring any retirements to them, they'll have to essentially field the older side once again throughout the competition. But I don't see them going anywhere. I do believe, though, that not their luck will run out, but, obviously a lot of these stars will start to retire and think about, the next stages of life, which is totally understandable. With Hawkins and Isaac Smith and Selwood and even Dangerfield, who could he really struggled to get himself up for a lot of the games this year. And as we mentioned, he kind of underperformed to what we know he can do. But, their experience, their leadership, which just shows on field, not one person in the Geelong camp today, and including those who did play throughout the season, took a backward step. And, I mean, when you've got Joel Selwood and Dangerfield of the like to really kind of lead from the front once you cross that line, it's an exciting prospect. And I do believe they can go again next year, but it's going to be it's always they say, you know, one premiership's tough, but going back to back is even tougher. And then if you manage to do a three-peat, you know, that's near right impossible. So if they can stay on top for one more year, you know, that'd be great for Geelong fans. But it'll be an exciting year next year to see how they go.
I think there's no reason why they can't keep on going. You know, they're in a pretty unique position because where the club is, you know, they can sell, you know, come down to Geelong, you know, you can live on the Geelong surf coast, you know, down Lorne, down Torquay, you know, you're close to the beach. You know, Geelong's you know, it's become quite a nice city, the city centre and everything and whatnot, and it's sort of out of the I guess the Melbourne fishbowl almost. And you know, like, you know, Jeremy Cameron, that was, I mean, obviously he was probably attracted to success and money, but also, you know, the lifestyle. You know, he's from Dartmouth, he's a country lad. You know, he can obviously live in a rural area, sort of training and stuff. It's an attractive place to play. And in terms of players they're going to lose, Sean Higgins is retired. We might see Selwood retire. But I reckon that's about it in terms of retirements. As we said, we think Hawkins will go around again. Don't think anyone else will retire. But yeah, like there's young talent coming through. And you look at the players that didn't play today. Brandon Parfitt was a sub. You know, disappointing. I mean, obviously he's a premiership player, but you know, disappointing for him at the stage of his career because he'd obviously want to be a starting midfielder. But he has been a starting midfielder for them, and he's a very good player. Sam Menangola didn't play today. Mark O'Connor is flitting in and out of the team. And obviously Max Holmes didn't play with injuries. So, like, there's some decent players that can come into this team still. Mustafa Radigali is floating around as a player, and he may need to step up at some point when Hawkins does step down. So we always thought, well, like, you know, oh, when Hawkins, you know, retires, then, you know, what's going to happen in Geelong? Then they sign Cameron. And then we're like, you know, what's going to happen when, you know, Scarlett goes down and their defence starts to struggle? Then they get Sam Coney. And then we're like, oh, Geelong don't have really good small forwards and stuff. And then they pull Tyson Stengel out of nowhere. And it's just kind of like, you know, they just keep on doing it. So, yeah, no reason why they can't. They've also kind of rewritten the way you think about football because, like, you know, the AFL is trying to make football, you know, all about fast movement and quick play and stuff. And, like, Geelong obviously have done that this season. But, you know, Geelong wouldn't be the fastest team. They wouldn't have the fastest players. And they wouldn't have they're just such a well-organised team and so well-drilled, and they play such a unique style as well. Sydney do play a similar one, but Geelong's is so unique. And, yeah, it's been a great season, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you, the fans, and about the finals. And we'll be back next year. And thanks very much for listening to Aidan and I.